Freedom without self-control is slavery to impulses. This truth is uncomfortable because it removes the excuse that most people hide behind. They say they are free because no one is commanding them, no one is forcing them, no one is restricting them. Yet they do not notice how quickly their actions are dictated by hunger, anger, pleasure, fear, boredom, or habit. They believe freedom exists outside of them, in the absence of rules, but real captivity lives inside, in the inability to resist what arises within the mind and body. An impulse is not intelligence. It is a signal, a reaction, a movement of energy that demands expression. When a person obeys every impulse, they are not choosing, they are obeying. The body says eat, and they eat without awareness. The mind says escape, and they reach for distraction. Emotion says react, and words are thrown like weapons. There is no pause, no space, no authority within. How can this be freedom if every moment is a response to the strongest sensation? Self-control is often misunderstood as suppression, but it is not violence against oneself. It is clarity. It is the ability to observe an impulse without becoming it. When hunger appears, you see it. When anger rises, you feel it. When desire pulls, you recognize it. But recognition does not require obedience. The moment you gain distance between awareness and action, a choice is born. Without that distance, there is only reaction. Look at the patterns that repeat in people's lives. The same mistakes, the same regrets, the same apologies. These are not accidents. They are the result of living under impulse. The person who explodes in anger again and again is not unlucky. The person who wastes years chasing pleasure is not unfortunate. They are untrained. Their inner world lacks structure, and chaos always fills empty space. A person without self-control is easy to manipulate. Advertisements, trends, opinions, and crowds all work on impulse. Fear is triggered, desire is stimulated, insecurity is exploited. When the mind has no discipline, it absorbs everything. It believes everything. It reacts to everything. This is why external freedom alone is meaningless. You can remove all chains from the outside, but if the inside is weak, new chains will immediately form. True power begins when you stop identifying with every thought and feeling. Not every thought is you. Not every emotion deserves action. Not every urge needs expression. When you realize this, you stop being dragged through life. You begin to stand still while the inner storms pass. This stillness is not passive. It is alert. It is strong. It is the position from which real decisions are made. Self-control is built through small acts, not grand declarations. Waking up when it is uncomfortable. Staying silent when the ego wants to speak. Ending an action that brings short pleasure and long damage. These moments seem insignificant, but they are the training ground of freedom. Each time you do not obey an impulse, you weaken its authority. Each time you choose consciously, you strengthen your own. Without self-control, freedom becomes self-destruction. The mind justifies everything it desires. The body demands more and more stimulation. Life becomes a cycle of craving and regret. The person may claim to be free, but their life shows otherwise. Scattered energy, unstable emotions, broken focus, constant dissatisfaction. This is not freedom. This is bondage disguised as choice. When control is absent, impulses become masters. When control is present, impulses become information. One enslaves, the other serves. The difference is not in the impulse itself, but in who holds authority. The moment authority returns to awareness, Life stops being a series of reactions and becomes a deliberate path shaped by intention, restraint, and inner strength. Discipline is the foundation of true freedom, yet most people resist it because they confuse discipline with punishment. They imagine restriction, pain, and loss of joy, so they run toward comfort and call it freedom. In reality, the absence of discipline does not create freedom, it creates disorder. And disorder always limits movement, clarity, and growth. A life without discipline may feel light at first, but over time, it becomes heavy with consequences. Discipline is structure applied to life. It is the alignment of action with intention. Without structure, energy leaks in all directions. The body becomes weak, the mind becomes scattered, and emotions become unstable. With structure, energy gathers, strength increases, focus sharpens, calm replaces restlessness. This is not control imposed from the outside, but order built from within. Look at the body. Without disciplined movement and rest, it stiffens, aches, and decays early. With regular training, the body becomes capable and responsive. Movement becomes easy, endurance increases. The discipline of training does not take freedom away from the body, it gives the body more freedom to move, to act, to endure. The same principle applies to the mind. A disciplined mind is not a rigid mind. It is a clear mind. When thoughts are trained, attention stays where it is placed. Distraction loses power. Worry weakens. Fear no longer controls behavior. Without mental discipline, the mind jumps constantly between past and future, between desire and regret. This constant movement exhausts the nervous system and creates anxiety. Discipline gives the mind a center. Freedom is often imagined as limitless choice, but too many choices without discipline lead to paralysis. When everything is allowed, nothing is valued. Discipline defines direction. It says this matters, that does not. It removes unnecessary options so that essential actions can be taken with full presence. This narrowing does not reduce freedom, it concentrates it. People who avoid discipline often say they want to live naturally, but impulse is not nature, it is habit. True nature functions with rhythm and law. The sun rises and sets with discipline. Seasons follow order. The body heals according to structure. When human life lacks rhythm, it falls out of harmony with itself. Discipline restores that rhythm. There is a deep calm that comes from knowing you will do what must be done regardless of mood. Mood is unstable. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline remains. When discipline is present, you do not negotiate with resistance every day. You act. This reduces inner conflict. The mind becomes quieter because arguments disappear. Action replaces hesitation. True freedom is reliability within yourself. It is knowing that when you decide something, you will follow through. Without discipline, promises to yourself are broken repeatedly. Each broken promise weakens self-trust. Without self-trust, confidence collapses. Discipline rebuilds trust from the inside. One kept commitment strengthens the next. Comfort weakens freedom. It trains dependence on ease. Discipline trains independence from conditions. When you can function well in discomfort, you are not controlled by environment. When you can stay focused without stimulation, you are not dependent on pleasure. This independence is freedom in its most practical form. Discipline is not about force, it is about direction. You do not push water randomly, you guide it through a channel so it can reach its destination. A disciplined life is a channeled life. Energy flows where it is meant to flow. Time is used instead of wasted. Effort compounds instead of dissolves. When discipline becomes part of identity, life simplifies. Decisions become clear. Regret decreases. The person no longer chases freedom because freedom is already present in their ability to choose effort over ease, order over chaos, and purpose over impulse. Master the mind to gain real choice, because without mastery there is no choice, only reaction. Most people believe they are choosing simply because no one is forcing them, but they do not see how automatically the mind pulls them from one thought to another. A memory appears and emotion follows. A fear arises and behavior changes. A desire flashes and action begins. This chain happens so fast that it feels like choice, but it is only habit expressing itself. The untrained mind is noisy and impatient. It demands stimulation, confirmation, and comfort. It jumps to conclusions and clings to opinions. When something unpleasant appears, it wants escape. When something pleasant appears, it wants more. In this condition, the mind is not a tool, it is a tyrant. It dictates the direction of life while the person believes they are in control. Real choice requires space. Space between thought and action. Space between feeling and response. This space does not appear naturally, it is cultivated through awareness. The moment you can observe a thought without immediately believing it, power shifts. The moment you can feel an emotion without acting on it, freedom begins to take form. Observation weakens identification, and identification is the root of compulsion. A mastered mind does not mean a silent mind at all times. It means a mind that knows when to be active and when to be still. It means thoughts arise, but they do not drag attention away against your will. Focus becomes a skill instead of an accident. Attention stays where it is placed. This is not achieved through force, but through consistent training. Without mastery, the mind lives in extremes. It overthinks the past and worries about the future. It creates problems where none exist and magnifies small issues into heavy burdens. This constant mental movement drains energy and clouds judgment. When judgment is clouded, choices are poor. People then suffer the results and blame circumstances, never realizing the real cause was internal chaos. To master the mind, one must first see it clearly. This requires honesty. Watching how often the mind complains, compares, judges, and escapes. Watching how it resists silence and discomfort. This observation is uncomfortable because it removes the illusion of control, but without this discomfort, nothing changes. Awareness is the first act of discipline. Training the mind is similar to training the body. Repetition builds strength. When attention wanders and you bring it back, that is a repetition. When an impulse arises and you pause instead of acting, that is a repetition. These moments seem small, but they accumulate. Over time, the mind learns that it is not in charge. Awareness is. When the mind is mastered, emotions no longer dominate behavior. Anger may arise, but it does not decide words. Fear may appear, but it does not determine direction. Desire may pull, but it does not control action. This does not make a person cold or empty. It makes them stable. Stability allows depth. Depth allows meaning. Choice becomes real only when multiple options are available and none of them control you. If fear forces avoidance, there is no choice. If desire forces indulgence, there is no choice. If habit forces repetition, there is no choice. Mastery removes force. It returns authority to the one who observes. A person with a mastered mind can act against mood. They can do what is necessary even when it is uncomfortable. They can remain still when the urge to react is strong. This ability changes everything. Life stops being a series of emotional responses and becomes a path shaped by clarity. The mind is meant to serve, not rule. When it rules, life becomes fragmented. When it serves, life becomes aligned. Mastery does not eliminate thought, it organizes it. It does not destroy emotion, it regulates it. In this state, choice is no longer an idea, it is a lived experience in every moment of restraint, focused, and conscious action. Saying no builds inner power because every no given to what weakens you is a yes given to what strengthens you. Most people think power comes from doing more, taking more, experiencing more, but they overlook the quiet strength required to stop. To refuse an impulse, to delay gratification, to walk away from what feels good but leads nowhere requires more energy than indulgence. This is why so few develop inner power and so many remain dependent on comfort. The inability to say no is not kindness, it is weakness. It comes from fear of discomfort, fear of missing out, fear of being judged. When these fears control behavior, a person loses authority over their own life. They become available to everyone and everything, pulled in multiple directions, drained and resentful. Each unnecessary yes fragments attention and energy. Owner power is the capacity to remain centered while pressure exists. Pressure from desire, pressure from others, pressure from habit. Saying no is the act of holding that center. When an urge arises and you do not obey it, you feel resistance inside. That resistance is the training ground. Avoiding it keeps you weak. Staying with it builds strength. There is a difference between discipline and denial. Saying no is not rejection of life. It is selection. It is clarity about what matters. Without the ability to refuse, values remain theoretical. Anyone can talk about priorities. Only those who can say no prove them. Every refusal sharpens direction. The world constantly invites distraction. Notifications, opinions, opportunities, pleasures. If you accept them all, you stand for nothing. Inner power grows when you protect your attention. Attention is life force. Where it goes, energy follows. Saying no is how attention is guarded. When you cannot say no to small things, you will not be able to say no to large ones. Small indulgences train automatic obedience. Late nights, unnecessary scrolling, empty conversations, reactive speech. These seem harmless, but they weaken restraint. Over time, restraint disappears, and with it, self-respect. Saying no also means enduring discomfort without escape. Boredom, silence, effort, solitude. Most people run from these states, not realizing they are gateways to strength. The moment you stop escaping discomfort, you stop being controlled by it. This is a shift in identity. You are no longer someone who needs conditions to be easy. Inner power creates calm. When you know you can refuse yourself, you stop fearing temptation. Temptation loses its intensity because it no longer guarantees action. This reduces inner conflict. The mind becomes quieter because it knows resistance is possible. There is also power in saying no to others, not out of ego, but out of alignment. Agreeing when you should refuse creates tension inside. Over time, this tension turns into frustration and bitterness. A clear no maintains integrity. Integrity strengthens confidence. Confidence stabilizes presence. Each no strengthens the next. Restraint compounds. At first, saying no feels heavy. The body resists. The mind argues. But repetition changes this. What was once difficult becomes natural. Inner authority grows silently. You do not need to announce it. It is felt in posture, speech, and decisions. True strength is not aggression. It is containment. the ability to hold energy without leaking it through impulse or reaction. Saying no is containment in action. It is how power is stored instead of spent. A person who can say no chooses their life deliberately. They do not drift. They do not live by pressure or impulse. They move with intention, conserving energy, protecting direction, and strengthening the core from which all meaningful action arises. Order within creates freedom without, because the external world always reflects the internal state of the one who moves through it. When the inside is chaotic, the outside feels overwhelming. Time feels scarce, decisions feel heavy, and circumstances feel oppressive. People then search for freedom by changing environments, relationships, or routines, not realizing the root of restriction lives inside their own disorder. Inner order begins with clarity, knowing what matters and what does not. Without this clarity, everything competes for attention, thoughts pile up, tasks remain unfinished, emotions swing without regulation, life becomes reactive. In such a state, even simple responsibilities feel like burdens. Freedom seems distant not because it is unavailable, but because the inner system is unorganized. When the mind is ordered, priorities are clear. Energy moves in one direction instead of many. The person does not rush, yet they move efficiently. They do not feel trapped by obligations because obligations are chosen consciously. Order transforms duty into purpose. Purpose removes resistance. Disorder wastes energy. Scattered attention leads to repeated effort, forgotten intentions, and constant correction. This drains mental and emotional reserves. With low energy, tolerance decreases, frustration rises. The person feels constrained by small things. This is not caused by the world, but by internal inefficiency. Order is not rigidity, it is rhythm. Waking, working, resting, and reflecting with consistency. When actions follow rhythm, the nervous system stabilizes. Stability creates space. In that space, choice becomes easier. Calm replaces urgency. The person no longer feels chased by time. External freedom is meaningless if internal confusion remains. You can have flexible schedules, financial options, and open space, yet still feel trapped by indecision and restlessness. Without order, freedom becomes anxiety. Too many options overwhelm the unstructured mind. Emotional order is equally important. Unexamined emotions spill into actions and words. They create conflict, regret, and misunderstanding. When emotions are observed and regulated, interactions become clean. Clean interactions create trust. Trust expands freedom in relationships. Order also means limits. Knowing when to stop, when to rest, when to engage. Without limits, energy is overused and depleted. Depletion leads to dependence on stimulation. Stimulation reduces focus. Focus loss increases disorder. Limits protect inner structure. A person with inner order does not need to control the outside excessively. They adapt. Adaptability is freedom in motion. When the inside is stable, change does not threaten. Unexpected events are met with presence instead of panic. Presence allows intelligent response. Order within also removes unnecessary conflict. When values are clear, decisions align naturally. There is less inner argument, fewer doubts. The mind is not split against itself. Unity inside creates strength outside. The disciplined arrangement of thought, emotion, and action creates reliability. Reliability builds confidence. Confidence opens opportunity. People trust those who are internally ordered. Opportunities flow more easily. Life feels less resistant. Chaos demands constant attention. Order runs quietly in the background. This silence is freedom. It allows deeper focus, longer vision, and sustained effort. The person can move through the world without friction because they are not fighting themselves. True freedom is not escape from responsibility. It is the ability to carry responsibility without being crushed by it. Inner order distributes weight evenly. Nothing overwhelms, nothing is avoided. Everything is placed where it belongs. When the inner world is arranged, the outer world becomes navigable. Choices feel lighter, movement feels intentional. Life opens not because constraints disappear, but because the person has built a structure strong enough to move freely within them. Control yourself, or be controlled, because control does not disappear when you reject it, it simply changes hands. If you do not guide your behavior, something else will. Desire will decide, fear will decide, habit will decide, environment will decide. People believe refusing self-control makes them free, but in reality it leaves them exposed to every influence that knows how to pull their strings. Self-control is not domination, it is leadership. It is the ability to direct your own energy instead of allowing it to leak into reactions. Without this leadership, the inner world becomes a democracy where every impulse votes and the loudest one wins. Loud impulses are rarely wise. They are urgent, emotional, and short-sighted. When they rule, life becomes unstable. A person without self-control is predictable. They react the same way every time. Anger triggers anger. Praise triggers attachment. Criticism triggers defense. Predictability is weakness because it can be exploited. When reactions are automatic, manipulation becomes easy. This is why inner control is a form of protection. Control does not mean suppressing what you feel. It means choosing what you act on. Feelings arise naturally. Action is optional. When people confuse the two, they justify destructive behavior as honesty or authenticity. True authenticity is responsibility for impact, not indulgence of impulse. If you do not control your time, it will be consumed. If you do not control your attention, it will be stolen. If you do not control your habits, they will shape your future without permission. Control is not a cage, it is a boundary. Boundaries create space. Space allows movement. Modern life is designed to weaken self-control, endless stimulation, constant comparison, immediate gratification. These conditions reward reaction and punish patience. Without conscious effort, the mind adapts to this environment and loses depth. Control must be trained deliberately, or it will erode silently. Training control begins with awareness of patterns. Noticing when you react, when you escape, when you overindulge. This noticing interrupts automation. Automation is control by habit. Interruption returns choice. At first, this feels uncomfortable. Discomfort is the signal that control is being reclaimed. A person who controls themselves does not need to control others. Inner authority removes the desire for domination. Calm replaces aggression. Clarity replaces force. This person becomes steady. Others feel it. Presence influences more than pressure ever could. Without self-control, emotions rule behavior. Emotional rule creates instability. One day confident, the next insecure. One moment motivated, the next drained. This instability creates dependency on external validation and conditions. Dependence is another form of control, just less visible. Control yourself also means accepting responsibility without excuses. Blame is surrender of control. When you blame circumstances or people, you give them power over your state. Responsibility returns power inward. It says, I choose how I respond regardless of conditions. Self-control builds dignity. Dignity comes from acting in alignment with values even when no one is watching. This alignment creates inner respect. Inner respect strengthens posture, voice, and presence. Control becomes embodied, not forced. Those who lack self-control often feel life is unfair or overwhelming. They are constantly reacting, constantly adjusting, constantly recovering. Fatigue follows. When control is established, energy is conserved. Actions become efficient. Recovery becomes faster. Control is not about being rigid. It is about being intentional. Flexibility without control is chaos. Control without flexibility is stiffness. Balance is mastery. Mastery allows adaptation without loss of direction. When you control yourself, life stops pushing you around. You may still face difficulty, but you meet it standing, not collapsing. You move through pressure without breaking, because the center holds, and the center is governed by conscious choice rather than impulse. True freedom is not found in doing whatever you want, whenever you want. That path only hands your life over to impulse, emotion, and circumstance. Real freedom is built inward through self-control, discipline, mental mastery, restraint, inner order, and personal responsibility. Each of these is not a restriction, but a source of strength. When you govern yourself, nothing outside needs to govern you. When your mind is clear, your actions become intentional. When your inner world is ordered, the outer world opens. Freedom is not the absence of limits, it is the presence of direction. And the moment you choose to lead yourself rather than be driven by desire or fear, you step into a freedom that cannot be taken away